This is Next Steps for Seniors with your host, Wendy Jones. Each week, Wendy brings resources and information to help guide you through those next steps with elderly parents and loved ones. You can follow, subscribe, and share on your favorite podcast platform. If you have questions or topic suggestions for Wendy, you can call us at 248-651-5010 or email at hello@nextstepsforseniors.com.
Hello, and welcome to Next Steps for Seniors, Conversations on Aging. I'm your host, Wendy Jones. And as you all know, I have such a passion to share information and resources with our seniors and our families, because guess what? We all age. It happens to all of us, and we need to be smarter, wiser, and we need to embrace this time in our lives and not be fearful of it. And that is why this podcast is here, so that people will know information and do something about it before we get to a crisis mode. And I'm very blessed to have with me today Dr. Daniel Seidman. Hi, doctor. How are you today?
Hi, Wendy. Doing well. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you. He is a practicing primary care physician and oversees several SALTA locations, also affiliated with local hospitals in Michigan. He is the co-founder and physician at Kin Health. So very knowledgeable, very smart, and has presented all over on various topics. But today, our topic in this first segment is going to be decoding food labels. So making smart food choices. And if I remember correctly, doctor, it was around 1990 when we in the United States decided to start using nutrition labels. Is that correct?
Yeah, Wendy. And again, thanks for having me. Big fan of the podcast. So the original food labeling goes back to the 1950s. So post World War II, all of a sudden we have these new processed food products on the shelves, a lot of undernutrition and lack of, necessary vitamins and minerals going on. And people didn't know what to make of all these new products. So that's when food labels were originally introduced. But fast forwarding to the 90s, now all of a sudden we have different problems that we're dealing with as an American society: overeating, overnutrition, and obesity. And so food labels kind of revamped and serving that new purpose now.
Right. And do you think it's helped?
Oh, such a tough question. I think it's helped further the education and the awareness of these sorts of things. But as many are well aware, the obesity epidemic is persistent, and so we're still working on it. Exactly.
And that's why you're here today. So yeah, exactly. Because we care, right? We don't, obesity, clearly. I was just in Italy, actually, I got to tell you, and so blessed. It was on my bucket list trip. And as I'm walking around Italy, my husband leans over and he goes, "Do you see any obesity?" And I was like, "No, but we've been walking for 10 miles and this is what we do there." Anyway, so let's go back to, when people look at a nutrition label, because you have a passion for this, because you've seen, tell us a little bit how this passion got created.
Sure. Well, I think I became interested as a primary care physician, trying to understand the battles that my patients were facing and fighting, the food products that were available to them and what's not available to them, but also as a parent, understanding now I have two boys, 8 and 6, and seeing how they treat foods, how they become addicted to certain food products, and trying to set them up for success. So personally and professionally, labeling is of increased interest to me.
Right. So when you look at a nutrition label, what should be some of the first things that our seniors should be looking at?
Yeah, so I think even backing up one step, ignore whatever's on the front. They hide the nutrition labels on the side or the back of products, and there's a lot of claims on the front, a lot of colors and photos that can be misleading. So ignore that, flip the product around, and start looking at the nutrition label. I think the best place to start is the ingredients list. Healthier foods tend to have a shorter or smaller ingredients list. And usually they have ingredients that you can understand and pronounce, things that you could draw a picture of. If there's a long ingredients list just under the nutrition facts label, things that you can't pronounce, they sound like chemical names, probably something you should avoid.
Yeah, the longer the worse, right? I hear you on that. Okay, makes sense. And then as far as, some of the other issues that, you've talked about in your presentations are serving size, percentage of of daily values and how that could be misleading. Can you kind of talk us a little bit through that serving size component? And I go back to McDonald's with the supersize thing. Do you remember that whole documentary they did?
I sure do. Sure do. Yeah, the serving size is a tricky one. It's this one tiny line on the nutrition label, and the favorite example that I like to include in my lectures is a bag of Doritos nacho cheese chips, which they're delicious. Don't get me wrong, but there's one of the common products is a 2.7 ounce bag. It's about this big, as you can see on the video. It's fair to say it's a personal bag. 1/5 of a pound of chips. And it says it's 150 calories, which sounds pretty innocent to me. But when you come across that serving size line that says 3 servings per bag, all of a sudden that bag is a 450 calorie bag of chips. And it's a huge difference. And that serving size, some people skip right over because the calorie is the big number now on the current iteration of the label. But you can't skip over it because it can be very misleading.
So you're saying definitely look at the serving size and the calorie intake. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. And obviously sugars are an important component right now, especially with diabetes on the rise. What's your intel on that?
Yeah, so sugars and added sugars are now listed separately on nutrition facts labels. Definitely something we should all be paying attention to, especially those who have been diagnosed with diabetes. And there's a huge difference between things like natural sugars and added sugars. The easy example is an apple versus apple juice. Natural sugars in an apple, you digest them slowly because of the fiber in the apple. You tend not to have as large of a spike in your blood sugars when eating an apple. But apple juice, all that stuff is processed, and you bet there's some additional sugars in most apple juice products besides what's present just in the apple alone. And those things can cause, higher sugar spikes. And in general, they're metabolized much faster, leading us to consume more or additional calories than we would have eating other foods. So sugars require our dedicated attention. And there's also things that, you may not recognize as sugars, things on the labels like fructose or lactose. A variety of other high fructose corn syrup, for example. All these things are essentially sugars, added sugars, and we need to be aware of those.
What about fats too? There's good versus bad fats. And I think so much of our public is confused by the difference between those.
Yeah, and not just the public, Wendy. I think the practicing physician public as well. There's a lot of conflicting information out there, misinformation. It's hard to tell, good and bad fats from each other. What I encourage my patients to do is really pay attention to the total fat content, but also the saturated fat and trans fats. So trans fats are not a thing that humans need, so 0 is the right number for that. But saturated fats, especially from animal-based products, are the ones that get us in trouble. Those saturated fats, when we consume them, our body converts them into cholesterol. And so for those who have elevated cholesterol or trying to avoid developing heart disease, avoiding saturated fats is really important. And just another area where food labels could be confusing. People think, oh, well, I have high cholesterol or I want to avoid cholesterol in food. I'm going to eat low cholesterol foods. But that cholesterol line on the nutrition facts label is not what drives our blood cholesterol levels. It's the saturated fat that does that. So, these names are inherently confusing.
Right.
And I do encourage those who are, watching their cholesterol to really monitor their saturated fat intake.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What about as we age, the role of protein? Isn't it just more important? I mean, it's important all the time, right? But to have healthy proteins?
Yeah, absolutely. So depending on who you talk to and what school of thought you ascribe to, we're either getting too little or too much protein in our diet as Americans. But either way, as we age, we deal with something called sarcopenia, which is a decrease in muscle mass. That, again, is a natural occurrence as we all age, and it's one that needs to be combated. And we do that with resistance training, strength training, and making sure we have adequate protein intake. And that should be done with high quality protein sources. So things like lean meats and legumes, I think are key in the diet as we age. And sometimes those things are harder to digest as we age. So finding a high quality protein that works for you as a senior is really important.
Okay. All right. Excellent news. Great. I love this. And what about, you have a fantastic example, if I remember correctly, of Oreo cookies and it was a granola bar. Can you talk us through that? I know we don't have a visual right now, but I would love for you to talk us through that analogy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have this nutrition presentation that I give, and one of the shock factors, I think it's really important to get people paying attention early on, right? Is that I put up two nutrition labels. And I asked the audience to, tell me the difference between these two. And when you look at them, the calories look similar, the added sugars look similar, saturated fats look similar, salt looks similar. So it's really hard to tell if one is healthy or not, if one is better or worse than the other. And then once I get some input from the audience, I go ahead and throw the pictures of both products up there. And it's Nature Valley granola bars and 3 Oreos. And they have an almost identical nutritional fact profile. And, but we wouldn't think anything of having a Nature Valley granola bar for breakfast, perhaps. But 3 Oreos sounds like it would be terrible for you. But again, looking at that nutrition facts label, they're basically identical. And that, when I found that out too, it was a shock to me. We have them in my house. I was eating one of those Nature Valley bars while I was building the lecture the first time.
Right,
And
right.
so,
Thinking it's healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. Or not thinking about how unhealthy it could be, or I'd be, better off eating 3 Oreos because they taste better.
Right,
And
right.
I think it's such a powerful example because it really makes us question, these foods that look healthy or perceived or marketed to us as healthy. What are they really?
We're going to talk more on that in the next segment. You're listening to Next Steps for Seniors, Conversations on Aging.
Caring for someone with dementia is one of the toughest journeys, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm Allison Schreier, and my experience caring for my husband inspired me to create Zinnia, a therapeutic streaming service designed to support people living with dementia and reduce caregiver stress. Zinnia offers research-backed videos intentionally created for people with dementia, engaging, calming, and easy to follow. Whether you need to ease agitation, create moments of joy, or make daily routines smoother, Zinnia is here to help. Family and professional caregivers use our content to turn challenges into opportunities for connection. Accessible by subscription on mobile devices and connected TVs, Zinnia is simple to use whenever you need it. Because when caregiving feels easier, life feels better. Go to zinniatv.com and sign up for a free trial today. Use the code RESOURCE for 15% off an annual Zinnia subscription.
Welcome back to Next Steps for Seniors, Conversations on Aging. I'm your host, Wendy Jones, and our topic today is decoding food labels and making smart food choices. And our guest in the studio is Dr. Daniel Seidman, who is a fantastic physician, very knowledgeable, wise, and we are so grateful to have him with us today because obesity is an issue and we want to be healthy inside. Everyone's working out and doing this stuff for the outside of the body. Oh, I want to be thinner. But the reality is what's going on inside of our bodies is what helps us live longer and healthier. And that's why you're here today, doctor. And we're so blessed to have you with us. I wanted you to share, if you could, some tricks to healthy food choices.
Yeah, absolutely, Wendy. And thanks again for having me. So we talk a lot about learning and interpreting nutrition facts labels, which are inherently confusing by design. It's really challenging. So there are a couple quick tips I like to share with my patients and family and friends on how to get started. How do you just go to the grocery store tomorrow and make some healthier choices? So we talk a lot about food labeling, but eating food without labels is a great way to go. Usually that means it's a single ingredient food. Broccoli, for example, right? Those are definitely the way to go. Preparing food at home versus eating a meal out, even if it's quote unquote healthy, choice on the menu. Restaurants always add salt, sugar, and fat to keep you coming back, right?
Right.
And when you do go to the grocery store, shopping around the outside border versus the inside is usually the way to go. The fresher foods, refrigerated foods are kept on the outside of the supermarket. And good food goes bad. So if you see a food that expires a year from now, that's probably something you should not be eating. Don't eat anything that your grandparents wouldn't recognize as food. That usually means it's some ultra processed type product. And the rules from Michael Pollan's excellent books, eat real food, not too much, and mostly plants. can take you far.
What is your take, just out of curiosity, on, like, for example, the vegetables, going organic versus not? I mean, is there sprays and cleansers we can use on our vegetables that will get rid of some of the pesticides, or just give us your take on that? I'm curious.
Sure. Yeah, it's a topic fraught with controversy. So there are the way that I try to break it down, and the way that we do it at my home is that we try to buy organic when it makes sense. In terms of financial, sometimes the organic raspberries are $20 instead of $3.
Right.
I would much rather have my kids, it's not really sustainable for anybody. So, I'd rather have you eat raspberries than not eat raspberries. But if I can make a reasonable choice between organic raspberries and non-organic, well, we tend to go for the organic ones. They're usually watching for things like pesticides that have been shown to be, cancer causing. They try to do things the right way on the farms in terms of, using clean water, clean soil as much as possible. It is impossible in our world to avoid those things. That's just the way it is. But I do think organic can be the way to go. Again, as long as it's not cost prohibitive. I don't want people avoiding fruit because they just aren't eating the organic fruit. Like, fruit is good in general. And there are some fruits like, apples, we can wash away some of the exterior pesticide product that is on them. But they're still grown in that soil. And so you do your best.
Right. The one thing I think I might have done right is I have a really good vegetable spray that I've been using for a long time. And my kids, I was in their college dorms recently. They both have a vegetable spray. I was like, okay, I might have done that right. But yes, I hear you. I hear you on that for sure. So I appreciate it. So looking at our nation, I mean, obviously this is becoming a hot topic. Give us some of your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah. So we heard a lot about it in this last election cycle. And, personally, I'm just glad it's a topic of conversation now. There's no question in our country that, we've had an ongoing issue with obesity. It's only getting worse. Half of adults are overweight or obese. We're seeing type 2 diabetes diagnosed in children more often. Some of the guidelines are changing to screen children for these sorts of things. It shouldn't be happening. It's a function of our modern society. And so, I'm glad, politics aside, that it's just a topic of conversation. And I'm hopeful that we'll make some progress on this as a country. There's some new food labeling coming. Our new administration has talked about addressing the food system in our country, which we know is worse off than many other developed nations. And so, in my mind, it's a non-party, bipartisan issue that we all suffer from, and I'm just hopeful for some progress in the coming years.
Well, and a big part of it is education. And that's why you're here today, because perimeter shopping, like you just said, walking around the outside of the grocery store, just that, if you just do that, right, it'll make a huge difference. And diabetes, correct me if I'm wrong, is like you have a 65% of getting dementia if you have diabetes. It's a high level of all of these different chronic diseases. So we want to stay away from that if we possibly can, especially the type 2, because that's something that we're contributing to, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's even what we call like a vascular dementia. You can think of diabetes as almost corrosion to the pipes, and those pipes are our blood vessels. And with increased levels of sugar, we get increased levels of vascular disease to the blood vessels in the brain, and that can contribute to things like Alzheimer's and dementia. And so, yes, avoiding diabetes and maintaining healthy blood vessels can definitely help to decrease the risk of that.
Right. Well, we're so grateful for you. Thank you for all of this information. I want to switch gears just for a second. We've got 5 more minutes left in our program into preventative screenings. I'm going to just kind of turn it over to you, because there are some things we should be doing as we age that are very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there is somewhat of a perception that we age out of screenings, which can be true. There are certain screenings that we do, but there's many that we don't. And there are new ones that we are able to get as seniors. So things like mammograms, colonoscopy, hearing and vision screenings, immunizations, those things continue to be relevant into our later years. And there are specific guidelines for things like colonoscopy and mammography that change, and talking to your doctor, looking at your past results can sometimes dictate future results. And, we're used to hearing that every 10 years for colonoscopy, but there are some screenings that have a little more nuance to them. And those should be talked about with a primary care physician.
Well, yeah. And some screenings like lung cancer and cognitive impairment have unclear recommendations. And, what does that mean for seniors, right?
Yeah. So lung cancer screening, that's something that was developed during my career. So we still kind of consider it a new thing. But, some people may not need it ever, and some people may need it every year. A lot of that depends on how much you smoked, what were you smoking, when did you quit smoking, and that is usually elicited in an interview with your primary care physician, and they can help to determine the right frequency of screening. And some of those guidelines even go up to age 80. And so those lung cancer screenings, will happen for seniors somewhat frequently. And additionally, for the cognitive impairment screening, we don't have a governing body, between the Geriatrician Society, the USPSTF, the Preventive Service Task Force, which is kind of the body that makes all these recommendations. There's nobody that says we absolutely have to do cognitive impairment screening, but when you get to know your primary care physician, the importance of that relationship, they can detect when you're responding slower, when you don't remember certain things. Also, a lot of seniors have, children or caregivers accompany them. It can be a great resource for eliciting any sort of changes that have been seen at home. And even if they're mild, there are things that you can do to help stave off those issues. I think you had a previous podcast guest talk about that. And also, changes you can make at home. Do you need somebody looking over your bills? Do you need somebody ensuring that you don't get lost? You can still function independently at home with a little bit of help in these situations.
Exactly. And that's the purpose really of Next Steps for Seniors, the company that I own, because our goal is to just put support and resources around you and keep you at home as long as possible. We don't want to make a transition unless it's absolutely necessary, but that's why you're here today, because we want to get, we're flipping the script, right? We're reframing the situation and saying, okay, what can we be doing now so that we don't get to this point? I mean, it happens. 75% of the people are going to need some kind of care as they age. So we can surround you and support you as much as possible, but let's stay independent. Let's stay mobile. We got 1 minute left, Doctor. What would be a good takeaway? I mean, we've talked about so many things on this program today, but what would you want to really drill home to our families and our seniors as a takeaway from today?
Yeah, I think an active relationship with the primary care physician becomes more important as we age, especially for our seniors. There are things that you may not think about. They may not be in the press or topics of conversation or even things people like talking about, but they may be of the utmost importance to our seniors, especially when you're trying to stay in the home. So having those conversations with your son or daughter or caretaker, having those conversations with your primary care physician, making sure you're checking all the common and uncommon boxes. Things like, do you really need this prescription anymore? Things like, do you have a loose rug in the home? Things that may not come up somewhat frequently. Do you have an advance directive? Do you have a power of attorney? A medical power of attorney? These things never matter until they do, and it's really good to kind of have them all lined up. And a primary care physician can definitely help with all of these things. So I think it's vital to have that relationship.
Can you share your information, website, whatever information you want to share so our listeners are aware of where you are and how to find your physician practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest place to find us is saltadirect.com. That's SALT like salt with an A, direct.com, and premiermd.com, as well as victorscare.org. So those are the names of our practices. We have 6 going on 7 in the Metro Detroit area, always continuing to grow. And we do care for many seniors across the spectrum of our practices.
Well, I highly recommend Salta. Thank you very much for all you do, Doctor. Thank you for tuning into Next Steps for Seniors, Conversations on Aging, because your next years can actually be your best years.
Thanks so much, Wendy. Great to be here.
Caring for someone with dementia is one of the toughest journeys, but you don't have to do it alone. I'm Allison Schreier, and my experience caring for my husband inspired me to create Zinnia, a therapeutic streaming service designed to support people living with dementia and reduce caregiver stress. Zinnia offers research-backed videos intentionally created for people with dementia, engaging, calming, and easy to follow. Whether you need to ease agitation, create moments of joy, or make daily routines smoother, Zinnia is here to help. Family and professional caregivers use our content to turn challenges into opportunities for connection. Accessible by subscription on mobile devices and connected TVs, Zinnia is simple to use whenever you need it. Because when caregiving feels easier, life feels better. Go to zinniatv.com and sign up for a free trial today. Use the code RESOURCE for 15% off an annual Zinnia subscription.